This is the story of you, the story that has shaped your day or maybe your entire life, where your story becomes our story, because without you there is no me, and no me without you. Tune in each week as we share stories of life, yours and mine. Each episode will feature a special guest who shares with us their own truth. Join us as we uncover just how unique and similar we all are. This is the story of you and of me. I'm Donna Politis, your host. Welcome to My Spoken Truth. Hello, everybody. My name is Donna Politis, and I'm your host of My Spoken Truth. On this episode, joining us is Stef Sifandos, relational alchemist, community builder, and change maker. I asked Stef to be on this podcast because I've been following him on Instagram and Facebook for just over a year and a half. And I have to say, from the very first moment, I was a little bit in awe of this man that was presenting material that was so raw and so genuine and in such a vulnerable way, and giving depth to this material with an understanding of himself, things that he's gone through, and showing us the way, showing us a path, showing us other ways of thinking and being. And this has truly inspired me over the last year and a half. One of the things Stef says in his bio, and you can watch that on YouTube, is I help people die, regrow, and evolve. I help them step out of one skin and into another. What a beautiful way to express the work that he does. We truly do need to step out of our own skin. We need to shed. We need to unveil ourselves to the truth of who we are. So I hope you get as much out of this podcast, as much out of this episode with Stef as I did. It was a real treat to have him on. Thank you so much, Stef Sifandos. So Stef, this is a real treat. Stef Sifandos, relational alchemist, community builder, change maker. I actually love the titles that you've given to yourself. Thank you. How did you come up with the title Relational Alchemist?
Thank you for a warm welcome, Donna. I was I was at a point in my service, in my business, and I was thinking, I wasn't quite content with the title that I had. It didn't resonate. It wasn't quite where I wanted it to be. I can't even remember what it was, to be honest with you now. But I couldn't remember. I couldn't really connect to it, and I was just in my car driving. I was driving to my friend's gym where I train. We train often together, and I was giving some serious thought to how I wanted to present in the world and who I wanted to be and what I was about and what my focus was. And it just came to me. That's just came to me, and shared it with part of my team, and they said, yeah, that's a really great name. Let's do that. And I said, cool, let's do that. That's it.
I've been looking at your videos a little bit more than usual lately because I knew we were going to chat, and I've been listening to the way you speak, the way you communicate, how you transfer your message through video and through your writing as well. Your blog posts on your website are excellent, very detailed. Tell us a little bit about what you do for folks that are just meeting you for the first time.
Sure. So essentially I assist people in recognizing the value in relationship, and whether that be relating to themselves, to their purpose, to their dharma, to ideas, to beliefs, to other people, so family, friends, to their beloved, so intimate romantic relationships, and really enhancing the quality of those relationships and the creating a clearer conduit for the transference of wisdom and awakening to come through the engagement and the being present to relationships and the power that relationships hold, especially when we are able to be attentive to our relationships. Yeah.
Do you work more with individuals, couples, or both?
Both.
Awesome. I see you
It
also.
essentially just help people immerse in happiness, immerse in clarity in their own authentic selves.
And I see that you also do a lot of traveling. You do workshops basically worldwide. Is it more along the lines of team building? How would you describe the workshops and the seminars that you do?
Oh, it's a great question. They vary depending on the program that I'm running. So I do work. I have specific programs for relationships, and I have specific programs, various programs actually. Um, but with respect to my travel and the speaking and the workshops, it depends what program I'm running. And whether it's a half day event, full day, 2 day, 5 day, 9 day, 7 day event, or a journey experience. Because I work very closely with men as well, helping men step into their healthy masculinity or healthy, teaching them tools and how to be a healthy man in modernity and what that means for men and helping them really identify with principles of healthy masculinity. But with respect to the seminars, to the workshops, and so forth, it really is largely around conscious relating and what that means. And so I've developed a model and a program around conscious relating. There's 12 principles in this model, in this program. And I'll really focus on either all of them, depending on the length of the workshop and the structure of the workshop, or I'll pick one or two, and it will just really speak to those. And there'll be, and if there's opportunity for, there are embodiment practices as well that are included always in the workshops that I run. Yeah.
Beautiful. So I want to know more about you. What makes Stef Stef? Who are you? How did you begin? What was the major turning point in your life that created this version of you?
I like the way you actually frame that question. It's a very powerful way to frame it, because there are so many various turning points in our lives that continue to shape us and allow us to be ourselves in various expressions. I've been and thank you for your question. It's a very beautiful question. I've been a curious child from a young age, and never really felt satisfied with the process of query and the responses I was receiving from individuals in my environment. And I grew up in quite a violent, aberrant environment. So it forced me to go deeper within myself and become more introverted, especially in my earlier years. As I got older as a teenager, that changed a bit. But especially my earlier years as a young child, I was quite introverted. So I didn't read extensively. I read a lot more now than I did when I was younger. But I reflect a great deal. I spend a lot of time on my own. I was isolated quite a lot. And it gave me a deep opportunity to reflect on who I was and the nature of reality in the world and many other interesting subject matter. And one of the major turning points in my life came to me probably about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, where I was in an intimate romantic relationship. And that relationship became unraveled. I was not in integrity in that relationship. I was dishonest to myself, dishonest to my partner at the time. And that relationship became a catalyst for me to really look at my life. And I came face to face with a fork in the road. And I had two choices: either continue the same path of ignorance and living in fear and disconnection from self and being incongruent in my behavior and my thoughts and and all of that, or take a completely different path and journey and really explore the causality and the foundations of my behavior, the fundamental reasons for why I'm being the way I'm being and I'm living the life I'm living. And very blessed to have chosen the latter. And in that exploration, there was a very, very deeply profound time in my life, very painful, but deeply revelatory as well, and awakening and opening for me. And I was able to then really tap into and touch into these substructures of my own personality and my own way of being that had been with me for so many years, but I pushed them into being dormant and into the shadow aspect of self without looking at that. And I allowed them to come up and be greater, healthier expressions of myself. So in short, that was a major one major turning point in my life, and gave me tremendous clarity and heart opening as well. And I was faced with many deep emotions as a man as well, being very much in my unhealthy male presence. To come into a healthier version of that and step into a healthy version of masculinity or male presence, there was so much. I could talk about this for quite some time. There was so many layers to that. I released so much. I had multiple ego deaths, so to speak, and multiple psycho-emotional deaths and shedding of the old and coming into new. And as we know, there's often great pain and fear rises to the surface when that arises and when that comes, and when we actively pursue that form of embodiment, that form of practice. And I'm very much committed to myself. And it was actually at that point where my resolve and my commitment to self became far stronger, and no matter what I was faced with, I would remain with that, and I would go as deep as what was necessary. And that's something that has remained with me and continues to grow stronger as well. And it may not serve everybody, but it serves me very well in terms of just organically being in integrity and also not fearing the unknown, not fearing the darkness, because I've come so spent intimate time with it on multiple occasions, and as many of us have, and it's a beautiful gift.
You said something in a video post that you put up yesterday, or the day before during your travels. You were at the airport, and there was something in there about some folks wanting to continuously chase the sunshine. Someone else also put up on Facebook, either today, I saw it this morning, so within the last 24 hours, that we don't always need to be happy. So simple. We don't always need to be happy. And yet, there is so much pressure these days with all of this self-help out there, life coaching becoming as huge as it is. There is pressure to be continuously happy and joyful and to show others that you have your life in check and balance and I don't want to say compartmentalized, but that we are able to look at all aspects of ourselves and find joy and contentment. Ultimately, that is a wonderful goal, but we're humans. We're constantly in flux, daily, monthly, yearly. This pressure to be happy, how would you react to that? What would you say to that?
Yeah, so initially, in my immediate response is that we can't and cannot and will not ever know any expression of happiness without understanding, knowing, having experienced a contrast. But we live in a realm and a reality of duality. So contrast is very important. And that the comment around chasing the sun was really it's an insight into the polarized nature of our greater collective, how we do not value the darker aspects of self or the darker aspects of the collective or society. They make us who we are. It's part of who we are. It's how we relate to that that really defines our journey and our path and defines the quality of the life that we live and the lives that we live and the level of well-being that we experience and healthy attachment to self and self-awareness and self-care and self-compassion and self-love and all of those postures that lead us to be grander versions of ourselves. And that really essentially means that we're moving to a place of wholeness as opposed to a place of fracture. So to be completely happy all of the time, I think would be immensely boring. And I think we wouldn't have the beautiful contrast that we could experience from allowing life to not of course we're in mastery of ourselves and we have mastery of our faculties, but being in deeper mastery of ourselves in terms of when life occurs, as it occurs, and we have a response or reaction to life, is being with the discomfort of that response, because it's come to us for many reasons, some known, some unknown, most of them unknown. So what can we extract? What can we gain? What value can we experience from what we are moving through in order to gain greater wisdom of self, in order to be of greater value to our own journey and that of others? And just to have greater insight to then develop and cultivate deeper learning tools and healthy coping strategies for dealing with difficulty and pain, because it's a very organic, natural part of life. And to polarize that is to really just delay the inevitable. And it's waiting for the volcano to erupt, as opposed to just little bursts erupting every now and then that don't cause much damage, but we know that it's there. But when, I've moved through very deep extremes, and then they're not pleasant. But the gift in that has been that I can recognize various layers and aspects of life differently now, with a greater proficiency and a greater understanding, because I've been through those volatile extremes. And not something that I recommend everybody go through. But it definitely has served me and served my path, especially the attention that I've placed on that path and on those experiences. That's everything. I mean, you can have two different people experiencing something very similar, and the person that is retrospective and introspective and reflective on their experiences is the person that will gain far more from someone that is just blind or just there, but not really there.
I made a few notes while you were speaking earlier about the turning point in your life. I want to go back to that, if that's okay. So,
sure, anything's okay.
You're at this fork in the road after the relationship ends, and you notice.
Well, we're still there, actually. We hadn't ended.
Okay,
she's a very beautiful, beautiful woman. She went against her traditional patterning and remained in the relationship for a number of months, and we did our best to work through it. But it didn't end up that way. But that was a massive gift as well in and of itself. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, that's all right. When you were faced with what I felt was like a fork in the road, you made a choice. I find folks that I've worked with, perhaps you see it in your work as well. It's when we're at this point, we haven't turned yet, we haven't pivoted yet. The pivot seems too scary. Change, we're fearful of change. It's a normal human emotion. How do you that's exactly what I want to touch on today. How do we actually pivot? How do we actually turn? How do we make that choice towards a new direction instead of self-catastrophizing or going into habitual behaviors that are actually destructive?
But we could intellectualize it for quite some time, and there's definitely tools that can assist in that, like psycho-emotional cognitive tools that can assist in taking the plunge into pivoting and into moving into that direction. Essentially, a big part of it is the pain of not pivoting needs to outweigh the pain of pivoting at some point. And a lot of it is hypothesized because we don't know the unknown. That's the whole point. That's why it's unknown, because we don't understand it. We don't know it. Therefore, we fear it because it's not familiar and it's not comfortable, and therefore it's not safe. So we just naturally move against what doesn't serve us, or what we feel may not serve us. For me, it was literally surrendering to the possibility of anything. So it was surrendering to the possibility of death. It was surrendering to the possibility of, like, physical death. It was surrendering to the possibility, because I knew that I would take myself to some pretty dark places, and I didn't know how I would cope with that. So I just had to say, well, if I die, then I die. And I know this might be like a taboo topic for many people, but this is the reality of the world that we live in. And many people experience this.
That's why
Sorry?
I said that's exactly why I want to go there, because it may be taboo and people need
Yeah,
to explore this aspect
yeah,
of self.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people see people. We're prima facie beings. Like we see people and we see them. They have their shit together. They have their stuff together. They're here. They're present. But we often don't know their stories and the layers behind that. And the reality is that we're so similar. Yes, we're different and we're beautifully unique, but we're so similar. Like this story carries nothing if no one can relate to it or resonate with it, because there's elements of the story that they have experienced themselves directly. And that's why you're asking me to share, because you know that it will relate to your audience. And that's what every interviewer does. That's what we do. We share story. That's how we connect and resonate to each other, through symbols and through story. So it's through the sharing of pain or joy or a particular emotion or a subset of emotions, whatever it may be. But for me, I made that decision to just surrender to any possibility, to anything, whether it be death, whether it be losing many of my primary peer groups, whether it be losing myself, um, behaving completely differently, looking at life differently, coming face to face with deeply entrenched fears that were making me feel like I was being annihilated every moment they came up, and then I would suppress them and oppress them within myself and move into behavior that was unhealthy. But I made the decision to not do that this time. So I knew that all of this was coming, and I just committed to the decision. And I did. I lost peer groups. I lost beautiful friends that I had for 20 years, not because they did anything wrong, because I didn't lose them. Loss isn't the right word. We're never really losing. And when we're losing, we're gaining. We're gaining, we're losing. It's always equilibrated and neutralized. But at the time, it was a perception of I'm losing everything that I know myself to be. I'm losing everything that I understand myself to be. Literally redefining self, shedding every layer possible. And I just made the decision to do it. At some point in time, there's no point intellectualizing it. There's no, like, yes, there are tools, there are practices that we can engage in, i.e., quickest way to change your state, change your environment, begin to, and I started doing that. So place yourself in a healthy environment, connect to nature, allow your vessel to be healthy, move your body, create positive brain chemicals that secrete and move through. Like these are tools and these are practices that we can engage in that can support our journey. But ultimately, we have to make the decision, and it has to come from here and here, and it has to be this simultaneous collapse and expansion that we just go forward and we don't look back. And most of us don't do that. And I was that person. I didn't do that for many, many years. I'd done a lot of self-help work. I'd been very educated. I was able to beautifully articulate and philosophize, but I wasn't living it because I was too scared to face my stuff, the darkness, the dormant aspects of self, the stuff in the attic or in the basement. So until I made that decision, nothing really changed. And it's when I made that decision that abundance was the norm in my life. And when I say abundance, I'm not referring to financial abundance, although that was absolutely part of it. I'm talking about the abundance of feeling emotionally liberated and being able to communicate consciously and clearly and articulately and authentically and very real. But then what happens is, the world needs some time to catch up because they see you in a particular way for so long. And then you have to sort of earn that back. That takes time. And so patience is necessary as well.
You speak it all so beautifully. You speak it from experience. There is a brightness in your face. You're simply glowing. And one of the reasons I follow you is because you're vulnerable. You speak your truth. You share your truth, and I can resonate with that. I feel like I can trust you along the journey when I read your articles and I see your posts. Thank you, because it's because of role models like yourself that some of us can feel like we're connected, even though we're oceans apart, we're connected. And as you said earlier, all of our stories have some threads of similarity. And that's one of the main things that I like to see in others and hear in others is relating to the stories and see how we get through certain obstacles, how we make ourselves go. That was one of the questions I sent you, and I've never actually written that before. So it's a Stef question. What makes you go? And I wrote go in capital letters. Why? Because I know you're very physically active. We share this commonality of training all aspects of the self. training the physical body, eating healthy, hanging out with family and friends. There's this well-rounded aspect to parts of your life that you show us. And I can really resonate with that because, like you said, you can intellectualize all you want about what the tools and the steps are to making this pivot and this decision-making process. One of the things that it comes down to is what truly makes us happy, what brings us joy, what brings us wholeness, what makes us feel safe. And something that you said many, many times now is the word commitment. And earlier you said you made a commitment to yourself. As soon as you said that, again, I recall your training, your regimen that you have for yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about how somebody could create a commitment to themselves?
It's a beautiful question. Yeah, it really begins, for me, it begins with values. It begins with what is most important to an individual, and spending the time, as much time as you need to, 80% planning, 20% execution sort of thing, is spending as much time and energy and effort and attention and intention as you require to really get clarity on what you want and who you are and what's most important to you in life. So your purpose or your dharma, your values, what experiences you wish to partake in this lifetime. And that can be, it's easy to explain that, and it's easy to even understand it. Doing it can be a little bit different because there are so many distractions. There are so many. It's really like going through a maze, and when we go through that maze, what we're dealing with is, society's layering on top of us. So we're dealing with the familial values. We're dealing with education. We're dealing with systemic governmental values. We're dealing with media. We're dealing with being bombarded with, hey, this is what's good for you, do this, when it's not necessarily what we want. And it's difficult to decipher that. So the deeper you know yourself, the deeper you spend more time with exploring every facet of self. So it's a movement towards wholeness, not fracturing of self. You become more diligent and more deliberate and more knowing. There's this deeper, like, intuitive awareness and knowing of, you know what, this doesn't serve me, I'm out. I'm going down this way, irrespective of, what society, what others say. Like, it wasn't that long ago that I was, and I share this openly to not, I share this openly to prove a point, to demonstrate a point with respect to prima facie associating, but also that when you really want something and you know it's for you, not all the time, sometimes you may have to move through great difficulty to embody that or attain that. It wasn't that long ago, and I mean literally not that long ago, maybe 18 months or 2 years ago, I was cleaning toilets and washing cars and scrubbing floors and in my friend's automotive shop because I needed work, because I'd come out of this relationship where I had such clarity and I knew what I wanted to do, and I was just creating, like, every day, hours and hours on creating and reading and creating programs and models and helping myself and people understand relationship and self and being able to navigate self. And if I'd got a full-time job, because what happened was I let everything go during that time where I was working deeply on myself. I let my businesses go. I got into debt. I was living off, that's another story, but I just made a commitment to go deep into self. I was spending 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day on personal development, personal growth, in and on me, and I let everything else go. So I got to a point where I found strength again, inner strength and clarity, and I didn't want to get a full-time job because it would take me away from this creation process. So I just needed something to come, because that's the world we live in. And it was very hard. That was another, like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm cleaning toilets, I've got degrees, I've got a master's degree, I've got this, I've got these ideas, I'm a man, I'm this, I'm that, like, what am I doing? And it really fucked my ego very hard. And I needed that. And it was good and it was very healthy. And I didn't do that for long, but long enough. And my point is that sometimes when you really want something and you know it's for you, there's deep, authentic alignment there, you do what needs to be done. Sometimes it takes a month, sometimes a year, sometimes 20 years. Ken Wilber, I don't know if you're familiar with Ken Wilber, he's an American philosopher and author. He's one of the greatest minds of our time, and it's not recognized yet. But mark my word, when he passes, probably everybody will realize how amazing he is. But he, PhD, very intelligent man, connected man, was washing dishes for 10 years whilst he was writing his books, and because it served him to do so. And I look to people like that, and many others, countless, that are living and pursuing and embodying what they are deeply inspired by. And no matter what, and they're consistently developing and cultivating a greater connection to self by doing so. And also because they know by being, for lack of a better term, better human beings, which is just really another term for being more aligned and living their truth, taking action in what their truth is, they are adding tremendous value to humanity and to themselves, to their own journey.
Those steps along the way, the cleaning the toilets, the washing the dishes, it's simply helping to facilitate your process. You're going to pay your bills. You're going to be able to sleep a little bit better at night. It may be very difficult on the ego. I can relate in my own personal story to something very similar that you've said. But at the same time, as you also said, when you know that there is something coursing through your veins, through your blood that you need to share, it's your purpose on this planet, you will do anything that you need to get by those few months, few years, whatever it takes, 10 years in Ken Wilber's case, to facilitate that dream. And in that case, even that task could be joyful. We could make it somewhat pleasant and joyful, knowing that it's going to bring us. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to bring us closer to realizing our dream. Is there anything else that you want to share? Anything else that inspires you to keep going forward? What is it going to take to keep inspiring you for the next few months, few years, lifetime?
I'm very blessed that throughout my life, most of my life, not all of it, but for most of it, I've really followed, as Joseph Campbell says, I've really followed my bliss. It's just the last few years I've been able to do that in a way that isn't murky and muddy and dirty, with just greater clarity instead of confusion and doubt. And for me, what continues to inspire me and what allows me to just live my truth is every day surrounding myself with people, environments, opportunities, reading material, whatever it may be, relationships that resonate deeply at the core of who I am. And I'll make those choices very deliberately and very consciously. I'm very mindful of who and what I spend my time with and where I place my energy. And of course, I'm learning, and we're always learning. We're always growing. I'm not immune to, making mistakes or making choices that aren't always conducive to my health. But I'd like to think these days that I'm learning quicker and growing faster and faster. Not that it's a race or that I need. It just means that I can make decisions in real time, learn, adapt, adopt, reframe, and continue. And I'm really grateful that I've created that space for myself, and also very grateful to all the wonderful human beings in my life previously and now, and for those that are to come as well, that have assisted me in facilitating that growth and, believing in me and trusting me. And, and I show up deeply for all the people that I work with. It's very inspiring. Like literally before this call with you, I had a couple that I was working with via Zoom. Actually, today was on Facebook Messenger. Just worked out that way. A beautiful couple that have been through so much trauma with themselves, but they are committed to each other. And they're not committed there's a little bit of fear there, but it's it's deeper than that. I cried 3 times during that session with them. My sessions with people are very different in that sense. It's amazing to watch. They're deeply inspiring, and that's what keeps me moving as well, is to see people and to feel people so committed to their own growth and just to their own transmutation. That's very inspiring for me. Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Likewise, thank you.
Deeply honored. I've been looking forward to this moment, and just a few days ago, the inspiration came so quick, like a flash of lightning, and you replied immediately. So I thank you for that. It really confirmed that where inspiration is, it's also met by other beautiful energy. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And have a wonderful rest of your day.
You also. Thank you so much for everyone listening and watching, and thank you as well to you, Donna. I appreciate it. Thank you.